Your joy mug. I have your joy.
You are, and I have we're both the dream,
and your
the
dream.
dream and the joy.
Yay.
Here's to dream and joy. Hey everybody, what's up? I'm DJ Val. This is Erin Crawford, and we're having some fun collaborating today on both of our podcasts. And so, this has been a really great pleasure having Erin get to come hang out with me for a while here in my little mountain place.
Yeah,
and
I did leave, but then I came back.
Yeah, it's great. I know. I'm like, I want the citadel for all of us to have our own like little pocket, because it's been really cool being able to like have space, but then come together and have our coffee talks, and then being able to like think about new opportunities to collaborate with each other and to like get the message of our own, work that we do out in the world in service of Bitcoin adoption and helping Bitcoiners live their very best lives, and helping people who aren't Bitcoiners hopefully become Bitcoiners too.
Yeah.
And so, yeah. So do you want to say, tell them what we came up with for like, tell them why this is also, guys, whoever's watching this at Swan Bitcoin.
Oh yeah. Hi
guys. Yeah. Erin and I are submitting this as kind of a mini little, proposal for a talk at Pacific Bitcoin Conference. We think it's very valuable, this content that we're about to share, and we think it will really benefit the bridge from before and after Bitcoin and helping us each reach our full capacity for joy and human expression. Individually. So,
and we talked about, it was BitBlock Boom this weekend, and we had conversation about like kind of like the next level of where these Bitcoin conferences are going to go. And, like I was thinking this morning, it's a lot of Bitcoin maxis that come to the events. And so it's like, how many more talks do we need on why you should take self-custody? It's like, yes, of course, those talks are important. But I think now it's like, I feel like the whole Bitcoin community is leveling up, instead of just talking about these Bitcoin citadels, there's actually people out there building them. Right. So it's like, how do we make it a more holistic experience? How do we have more tangible opportunities for connection with people one-on-one? Like, I was listening to Cafe Bitcoin this morning, and, of course, all conferences are amazing and like so good, but there's people that are on that panel together every morning who are like, oh, I didn't get a chance to run into you, and that's that's the juice that we miss. That's why I love the Beef Initiative so much, was just, such a small event with such deep connection. It's like, so it's all the experiences that are built around Bitcoin. It's like, yeah, we can discuss Bitcoin itself for hours on end, and we have, and we will continue to do so. But it's like, okay, now it's like, just like Lightning is being layered in as like a level 2. It's like, okay, how do we layer in more conversation and more experiences into this whole ecosystem that Bitcoin is turning into?
I think it's like the soft side. I call it the soft side of life, right? Like, we have the more tangible, even though Bitcoin isn't something you can touch in your hands, it's a tangible, in my mind, it feels tangible to me. Like, it's math, it's predictable, it's not this subjective thing like the human experience and the human emotions that we have. And so it feels like that's there. And then to continue expanding the conversation to the soft sides of what it means to be human, what it means to be a Bitcoiner, what it means to go through this revolution together, what it means to stay strong and grounded in your, your unique self, your one and only you, right? And how do we, I say the word reverse engineer, and you said, what is it? Backcasting.
Yeah, it's not me. It was Peter Attia that said it, but I heard it this morning. I thought, oh, that's cool. Like, kind of helps, just, again, language. Some people just understand different things differently. So backcast.
Yeah. And I think that's like what you just said. Like, I get stuck sometimes on the like, oh, there's too many Bitcoin podcasts out there, or there's already enough, people talking about personal growth, or there's already enough of this, enough of that, whatever. And what you just said, like, different people's voices resonate with different audiences. And, you might be saying similar stuff, but somehow I'm magnetized toward this person or that person. And so I think for all of us as, Bitcoiners and people who want to help educate and empower others to be able to utilize it, it's like all of our voice, they matter, and even though we may not be as technical as others, or we may not be as, financially savvy about how the macro stuff works, like we can at least point people in the right direction, and so I think it's important that we don't shy away from speaking, and sharing, these things with each other, not just Bitcoin, but contemplating our death.
Yeah.
How to live the fullest life in each moment, and being always like, I call myself incurably curious, and I always think of like, how can I keep that mindset? Because it's easy to go into old patterns and get like a little rigid and crusty, and for all of us, right? Yep. For any of us, like this is how it's supposed to be, and with whatever, whether it's finance.
Just to interject, like, I was always one of those people, and I still am in a lot of ways, where I'm like, oh, my routine is what helps me be my best self. It's what helps me regulate. And yes. And, it's also what keeps me rigid and not willing to make room for new possibility in my life. Like perfect example this morning, like, we need to record. And I'm like, well, I have to go to the gym, so it's that whole, and I was just saying yesterday, like I sweat daily. It's part of how I feel my best. But, I think at the very least, we have to be able to contemplate like, well, if I didn't do that, if I didn't have that outlet for my energy, what might I create, or what might come in if I needed to consciously redirect it towards something?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's that self-awareness. Like, am I falling into these same neurological pathways? Am I just, I don't know if it was Michael Pollan or what author it was, but that's why psychedelics, because they help bust you out. Like, they talk about it like a toboggan hill. When you first go down, it's like all that fresh powder. It's like, the track is very slow. And then the more you continue to go down it, the deeper the ridge and the faster, so that's how our brain works also. And I think that's kind of, I was going to say the beauty. It's just one of the beautiful aspects of Bitcoin is that it does help us to look at the things that we do from a different perspective.
Totally different perspective. Yeah. Well, I mean, clearly it's like what's going on right now in this moment, but I think it definitely puts that lower time preference of looking a lot more to the future and not being as short-term gain, short-term instant gratification mindset. Like I know it's changed me immensely in regards to that. And I think I'm still patterned a lot in my old ways of like, okay, what's going to give me the quickest relief right now? Or what's going to get me, the most money right now? Or what's going to, And it's like, okay, let's really step out a few years, decades, many decades, and it's hard to do that because I'm a nowist.
Yeah.
I love being here now.
That's such a good word.
Right? Isn't it? I'm a total nowist. And Ram Dass has taught me so much over the years, as that's really it, is being here now, being love now, being just aware, because you can never, even if we do this like backcasting or reverse engineering and writing our treasure map and code for life and our obituaries, it's still like the juice is in the moment.
Yeah.
Right now, this second, this little moment that we have. And it's like, how do you do both? Yeah. Gracefully, and not just be like, la, 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 I'm just going to do what I feel like all the time. It's like, that doesn't work.
Yeah. There is that interesting like juxtaposition, right? Because Bitcoin does help you have a lower time preference, which is actually good for thinking about your death. What do you want your life to look like? What do you want the life of your kids and your grandkids?
Yeah, exactly.
And, so you go to that place and then you think, okay, well, what do I need to do now to make that happen?
Totally.
Yeah. And like I have a saying in my work as a death doula that what matters in the end is what matters now.
Yeah.
So it is that whole, it's not being in one place versus the other, you know, like always future focused, low time preference. It's that and getting all the juice out of this same moment.
What matters in the end matters now.
Yeah.
And it is. It's so true. And it's just this, how are we consciously designing our nows so that it can achieve that vision of what matters? And so it is true. And I mean, what do you find in your talks with people that matters the most to them at the end?
Relationships and not having regrets. That's the big one. Like I was saying this morning, we've been having the death Bitcoin life engineering conversation for the last couple of weeks. And, you know, in my experience working with people as a death doula, in case you guys don't know that that's part of what I do, it's, you know, we talk about this fear of death, but that's kind of an umbrella, you know, well, what does that mean exactly? And I've come to discover people are mostly afraid of having regret at end of life. So not having healed relationships, not having taken that cruise through the Mediterranean, you know, and it doesn't really matter if it's a deeper, you know, if it's like, oh, I never had a connection to God, or if it's, I never took that cruise, right? Like what matters to the individual is what matters to the individual. It doesn't matter, you know, the depth of the thing.
Yeah.
If it's going to be a regret, it's going to be a regret.
Right. Like if I didn't enter my quilt into the quilting competition because I was afraid and I never, you know, it doesn't matter what it is. It's different for
it can be material, it can be spiritual, it can be emotional, but what are those regrets going to be? And the trap that we all get caught in is we all think we have time. Right. I fall into that trap every day, you know, like, oh, I've got time to write that article. I've got time to call my dad. I'll call him tomorrow. But, you know, and chances are if you had to bet, do I have more time than not? You probably do, but we never really know that. And that's the whole point. Right.
Yeah. I think it's that it's a delicate balance, right? Because you're hoping you're going to have some more time to do all these things and these connections, but it may be, you might get rugged, you know?
Yeah.
Like in December, just, 7-8 months ago, I flipped my minivan. It was a totally dry afternoon. I was completely sober. I was, the roads.
Caveat, she was not.
I know, I was not nothing. I was totally good. And it was like 2 PM and I was on my way to go, get my grays done, and so I'm just driving down and somebody veered in my lane and I'm like fucking honking on the horn and they weren't paying it. They were on their phone and I live in the mountains and I was like, holy shit. And so I overcorrected and then I flipped, smashed into the mountain and flipped my van. And I wasn't planning on that morning. Like nobody ever plans like what the fuck. And thank God I walked away from that, but I could have died for sure. And I mean, the van was oh my goodness. And so yay, seatbelts and airbags. But that was one of those like, oh, wow, that's real. Like, this is not a joke. Like it ends.
Yeah.
The shit ends for real.
Yeah.
And, I do think it's interesting talking with you about this week too. So I'm just wondering, do I want to go in? I don't want to go into that just this minute yet.
Okay.
Yeah, maybe we might.
We
might go into.
It's still early. It's only 13 minutes.
I know. Yeah.
If it's another 2-hour long episode, it might roll around to that eventually.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Yeah, but we'll talk about it later. The big it. Okay, so let's circle back to Bitcoin Death Inspired Living. Let's talk about like the no regrets living, the bucket list living, your daily practice. Like how can we, as individuals, create something that gives us the future that we're looking for?
Well, I think it's so interesting because I think, just maybe it's by default. I don't know. I'm curious what you think about this, but just being part of the Bitcoin space, like you are going to go down, rabbit hole, whatever, you're going to go down that path at some point, because I think, we start to see, we always need mirrors in life, right? Like we need to mirror ourselves off of other people, other things, in order to understand our own inherent goodness. So I think that's, we talk all the time, like, why do people that love Bitcoin, like, why are they all of a sudden spiritual, or why are they all of a sudden taking care of their health, or thinking more deeply about their relationships? And it's like, because we see this thing in Bitcoin and all of that it represents, and all of the hope and all of the optimism, and we want to become more like Bitcoin. So, like, I thought I was in a pretty good place, and I was before Bitcoin, and even my own, like, I have changed as a result. We're talking as well this morning, like, you kind of get to these places where you think you've kind of plateaued. You're like, okay, I think I've made it. And then inevitably something either knocks you down and you have all this work to do, or you see something that you want to aspire to. And I think that's a whole other conversation, I suppose. Like, why is it this thing? But in a society that's, we've been removed from death, we've been in survival mode for so long. We've had a high time preference. Like, we just haven't. And we haven't had a thing to feel really inspired about. We certainly don't feel inspired by our politicians, or, the banking system, or this hamster wheel that we're on. So it's like, okay, now this new inspiration is coming in. I'm actually starting to think about the future. Oh, what's going to happen in the future? I'm going to die. So what do I need to do now? What do I need to start to bring into alignment, so that I'm not on my deathbed going, oh shit, I never did XYZ, or I never forgave that person for the thing I've been holding in for so long. So what was your question? Did you ask me a question?
No, I just want you to talk. Chat it up, sister.
Yeah.
No, I feel like, so the question was about practices that we do on a daily basis, so that we can stay in alignment, like we said. And so it's that self-awareness.
I just think about it straight up. Like, there'll just be times in my day where I'm like, oh yeah, I'm gonna die.
And so what do you like envision? Like you were saying earlier before we hit record, that gentleman talks about like your last 10 years of your life. Like, what do you envision the last year of your life looking like? Let's get it squished down a little bit more.
I was thinking about that on my walk this morning.
Really?
So, I mean, to be transparent, which is the whole point, and we were talking about it before we sat down, I'm like, am I going to be an old lady alone, just sitting there? Am I going to be full of regret? Like, what's going to, and it's really interesting. I mean, as mindful of it as I am, and as much as I feel like I'm going to produce good things in the world and do good things for humanity, that fear is still there, that none of this will matter, and I will not have anyone who loves me at the end, But then, like I was saying, we have to look at the now for evidence that that's not true. So like, here you are beside me, right? And we have this thing happening. So why would I allow myself to fall into that fear-based mindset? And I'm just, happen to be wearing my freedom over fear shirt.
Yeah, freedom over fear.
Right. And we've had this conversation before too, is that I think all things in life boil down to either love or fear. So we're going to go to the fear-based mindset. It's part of our survival instinct. It's just that reptile brain. And we've been conditioned and indoctrinated into a system where we exist in a fear-based mindset. Everything is scarcity. You know, there is not enough. We see homeless people everywhere. Like, it's hard not to think, ooh, fuck, what if that happens to me?
Every time I drive by homeless people, I think that. And I'm just so grateful that in this moment, it's not me. And I also understand the fragility of the human spirit and the human mind. I believe the human spirit is very strong. I think the human mind is not.
Yeah.
And especially a human mind that has not been trained and made aware of, like the spirit being aware of what the mind is up to and how it can
Do you
hurt us on accident.
Yeah. It's so interesting because like a strong, I mean, it really is, mindset is everything. Like mindset will get you through any physical, emotional, spiritual challenge. So it's interesting, right? Like as much as we can prepare and train for the hard stuff, you know, that's why I go for runs. That's why I lift weights. Cause it's like, I have to coach myself through those hard moments all the time.
Yeah.
And we also need things that come in and just knock us on our ass. That, you know, there's like, we can be proactive, and we also have to, you know, we're going to have those moments of being reactive.
Yeah.
And not that one is better than the other, but I think those reactive moments are like really fertile training ground.
Those are the biggest training grounds for this woman here.
Yeah.
I definitely struggle still with the reactivity of my nervous system being the way that it has been programmed for so many years. And then coming out of that fear-based reactivity, the fear-based storytelling that goes on up here because of all the shit that's going on out here. And then just not having the capacity and the energy, depending on what point of life we're at, especially when we're taxed with hormonal issues, if we're taxed with sleep deprivation, if we're taxed with issues around money, if we're taxed with issues around our relationship struggles, et cetera, you know, we don't have the capacity sometimes to pause, parse all the information, determine if it's true or not, and then make clear choices. We are in a reactionary state because of a lot of these things all happening at once. And if we don't consciously step back and out of it and take note of how the things are working, we're just going to be like tumbling along in it and then hoping like, okay, maybe I won't react today and I'm over here, instead of really understanding like, how do I keep my center? And I think that the mindfulness practice is very important, 100%. And your vibe practice, your practice of connecting with your essence, with your heart, with your spirit, with your soul through states of ecstasy, whether you're in nature, whether you're with music, whether you're doing art or dancing or whatever. It's those moments too that I think for me personally get me in a state of faith. They get me in a state of faith and understanding that I am safe in this moment. Everything is okay. And so then it allows that energy to flow and my nervous system can chill the fuck out. And then I can think clearly to a certain degree. Sometimes I'll still be reacting, but at least I'm listening to that more intuitive thing. And then it can help my mind think more logically.
Yeah.
But it takes practice. I'm not always in the like, I'm in the highest vibe state. It's like, I just had a big important call before this and I did a lot of prayer, meditation. I wrote things out. I got clear. I wrote 2 letters so that my brain was like, okay, what are your intentions? What are your objectives? All those things. And I did a few things to get my body in a place of ease, and it went really well. So I was grateful. But the conversation that caused me to have this conversation today, last Friday, I didn't do the prep. I didn't get my mind and body into a place of power. I was on default and I just thought, okay, I'm just going to go casually have this conversation about something very important. And it backfired because I ended up going into a place of reaction.
Yeah.
And then that was not helpful at all to any of us. And so completely own that. But I realized like, wow, not prepping, not being mindful of being in my power and my intention, and then prepping and being in my power and intention and doing this, 2 totally different consequences and results, you know? And that's just like, oh, that's one thing I can do to help live a better life in the moment, you know, is be mindful of how I'm going to show up and communicate with people.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Do some forecasting.
Yeah. Seriously. And not just like, oh, I got this. I'm surfing on the wave and I'm fucking involved. It's like, you know, I'm not a big surfer, but I know that surfers, especially surfers who are hitting the big waves, like they have to study the waves for a little while, you know, and they go see what's going on, and they watch what's happening with other people, and they have to get themselves prepared, you know, to get out there and go do these big things. And I'm like, life is sometimes like that. And I guess I just sort of think like, just paddle out. It'll be great. I've done this before. I'm so good at this. Like, no, dude, it's just real.
Yeah.
So I think sometimes just pausing and remembering, like, you get a better result when you pause. That pausing is so important. Start now, allow a pause.
Yes.
Snap. Start now, allow a pause.
Yeah. That's a huge thing to remember.
It is.
And be mindful of and practice.
Yeah.
You know, like that was one of the, I think, I don't know if it was Scott on the last day of the Beef Initiative that did the devotional, but, or if it was Slim that mentioned the pause.
They both were talking about the pause too. And that's like,
oh yeah, that is so powerful. And I thought I'm always going to pause from now on. And then I just realized I had completely forgotten about that.
I know. Well, and it's like the snap goes mommy thing that I'm working on. I came up with it because I wanted to do like, start now, achieve progress. Start now, access power. Start now, align peace. Start now, allow a pause. And so the first thing you have to do is allow the pause.
Yeah.
That's the number one.
Yeah.
So it's start now, allow pause. And then you can align, you know, your peace. Then you can access your power. But it's like, if you're not pausing, you're on autopilot.
Yeah.
And you're just hoping that it fucking works. And, you know, it's like.
Not even hoping that it works. You're just reacting.
Yeah. You're just kind of in there.
Yeah.
And so it's that mindful living. This is why this like 11/11 project mindset of mine, because I need sticky notes. I forget things. And at the 11 minute of the hour, 24 times a day, it's this opportunity, if we wish to tune in and be like, I'm going to reset my mind. So whether it's 2:11 or whatever 11 your time, but like imagine a tapestry of all of us in the world that have developed one simple practice together, and it's allowing a pause on the 11 minute of any hour. Not that you have to do it 24 times a day, but imagine 5 years from now.
You have to wake up in the middle of the night.
At 11 you must go do it. No.
Pause and then go back to sleep. Like I was already pausing. I was sleeping.
I was freaking pausing, man. I did great.
I've been on pause for 7 hours.
Oh my God. But like think about the consciousness shift that we could implement on our planet if we could do that one tiny simple thing. Wouldn't it be interesting? Like as a thought experiment to understand like what would be the implications of that? And I think the implications would be exponentially gorgeous and wonderful and big for the way that we operate as humans, you know, and it doesn't matter what political you believe in. It doesn't matter what God you believe in or not believe in. It doesn't matter if you're green or purple or short or sideways, whatever. Nobody cares. Like everybody could use this tiny little tool.
Yeah.
And then that's your moment to reflect. How am I doing right now? Am I aligned with love? Am I aligned with fear?
Am I breathing?
Am I breathing? Am I abundant? Am I truly in lack, or is that a bullshit story? Am I powerful? And you know, all of it. Sending love out to the world and peace to yourself and peace to the world. It sounds so cheesy and corny, but it's real.
Yeah. And that would also be a good opportunity to remember your death at the same time.
Exactly.
You know, so like in the moment when if you're caught up in this reactivity, you know, I talk about this a lot. Like we need to zoom out as much as we can. We need to zoom out. We need to observe, you know, you talk about this as well. Like observe the life from above and go, oh, remembering that one day I'll be dead.
Yeah.
Does this thing that has taken over my reality and completely hijacked my nervous system. Like in that context, in the context of remembering that one day I won't be here, does this thing really matter? Is it worth all this energy that I'm giving to it? Is it worth it to, you know, when you think, imagine if you had a thing like a calendar that showed you every single day of your life that you had left. And then you're going to sacrifice one of those days to like,
spin out
whatever it is.
Bullshit.
Yeah, spin out on some bullshit. That's such a good way to put it. And you know, the mind fuck is that we don't have that calendar. right?
Yeah.
So we think that we have infinity and I mean, gosh, this is a whole other conversation as well, but some people, depending on the environment you grew up in, like chaos is actually what feels normal.
Right.
So if you are giving a lot of your time and energy to chaos, that might actually be where you feel most safe or what feels most familiar.
It's familiar. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Dr. Joe Dispenza talks a lot about that, and just how we're trained because of these like default neural pathways that like, oh, this is familiar to operate at this much uncertainty and this much confusion, chaos. And like when you're
hypervigilance too, we talked about.
Yeah. And our bodies just feel more familiar there. Not that it's comfortable or where we wish to reside, but there's that, they talk about changing your behavior and your default neural network, I guess. And so they talk about, like if you were driving a truck through the mud back and forth to go from point A to point B, at some point, all you have to do is push the gas.
Yeah, like the toboggan hill.
The toboggan like that. And so it's just, and then
you could just close your eyes and just hammer on the gas and you're still going to make it.
Exactly. And so in order for us to create behavior shifts so that instead of going left, we want to go right at this turn, you have so much more effort and awareness that you have to put in to get the new neural pathway to take the turn. Yeah. So if you're in default mode rather than reacting and going over here, you have to consciously keep pushing yourself over here until this is a deeper groove, so that if you are on autopilot, then you're going to go that way. And so that to me is where that daily practice comes in. It comes in, obviously being with each other in relationship.
I was going to say,
gives us the actual, like, this is the training to be in your daily practice and your kind of your soul dojo, like I like to call it. But then the real tests come when you're with other humans. These last 3 weeks have been hell on earth for me, and great. It's lessons. It's fucking lessons. Some more lessons. And wow, I thought I was doing so great. And I realized you are, and you still have all this to freaking learn, and you're still in default mode over here. And so
you're never outside of like the soul curriculum.
No, the curriculum just keeps
you get summer breaks and you get recess, right? You get like snack time. But
do we get graham crackers and milk with our soul
curriculum? There's no graduation. Like death is the graduation.
It is. Oh, you're right.
Yeah.
There is no graduation.
And we were talking too about like how do you want to be at the time of death? And we want to be like, fuck yeah, take me to the next level.
Let's go. That was fucking awesome.
Right? Float you down Death River.
Totally. Put some fireworks in my booty.
Because I don't know if it's a Buddhist idea, but it is an idea that's out there that the state of mind you inhabit at your time of death is actually, if you believe in reincarnation, who the F knows what happens.
Sure.
But that will be the reality that you enter back into. So I forget what I was reading, but could have been one of Ram Dass's things. He said, somebody died thinking about a mango, like mango was their favorite fruit. And then, they came back as a mango or something to that effect. So I think about that a lot. Like, I don't want to just get to the end with no regrets. And I mean, of course, yes, but I also want to be like, let's go, let's see what's next.
No shit. Like I do too. I feel like I want to leave this the way that I would leave Disneyland.
Yeah.
Like I want to leave Disneyland being like, weren't those rides great? It was fucking awesome. I like the Twister thing. It was so cool. Cotton candy. I love blue cotton candy. My lips are fucking blue. And everything was great. And, we got lost along the way, but we found each other. Yeah. Woo. Like, I want to leave, like, really, really book worthy. I want to leave knowing that my life is interesting enough to have written a book about it. And I also want to know that, like, other people felt more love because they knew me. That's it. Like, I want to just have adventures that are fucking crazy and wild. And I want to know that, like, the people in my life felt more love in this world because
exactly.
I love them.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
It's like, that's all. I don't know.
Yeah.
Everything else is like, and we want to get Bitcoin out.
Yeah. I think that is it. And I had a similar conversation with Texas Slim. It's like, I feel, I know at least for me, like, I know that my purpose is to increase the amount of love in the world. Yeah. And I think intrinsically as humans, that is the purpose, and maybe it's God's will, or, who knows why we have that innate desire. Mm-hmm. And then life happens, especially fiat life gets layered on top. And then we're unable to fulfill the sole purpose of being here. Mm-hmm. And again, it's like, here comes Bitcoin, where it's like, oh my gosh, if I didn't have to constantly worry about money, live month to month, how am I going to pay the electricity bill? Mm-hmm. I could actually tap into, how am I going to increase the amount of love in the world? And what is my medium going to be? Right? We all have different mediums. Yep. Slim's doing it with beef. You're doing it with, 11x love and community. I'm doing it through death. It's like, but we're all just doing the same thing at the end of the day. Yeah. And we're all like comparing and contrasting those things against Bitcoin, and finding this community of people that are also doing the same things, just in different ways. Yeah. And that's what's so cool about it. I thought I had to keep death and Bitcoin separate, because I kind of discovered both at the same time. Mm-hmm. And the more I tried to keep them separate, the more I realized, like, oh, it's the same thing. It's all about more love. Right.
It is all about more love. It is. Look
at our glasses. Look at her.
I know. It's like, woo! I love these glasses because they remind me I have a choice. Every time I look at something, I can choose to look at life through just plain glasses, or I can choose to look at life through the lens of love.
Yeah.
And yes, that is corny and cheesy, and I don't care, because that's me. I'm queen of corn.
Corn. One day she will be the queen of corn.
I want to be the queen of
corn.
The cornholio. But it's true though, man. And it's just like, how do we, some people are chefs, right? Their love language is cooking food for people, and that's the service and unique gift that they bring to the world. And so, like, imagine a world where we all truly said yes to our essence, and yes, and took time to understand what it is that lights us up, what it is that we can share with the world that will provide value, what it is that, we can exchange value for, because, oh yeah, this person does that and this other person. So it's this, wouldn't it be a magical world if we could all do that? And I don't know, it sounds like wishful thinking, because someone's always got to clean the toilets, is what people say. Like, oh, there's always somebody like that. And I agree. And what if they're just on a different level or layer or tentacle of spiritual journey, evolution, and that's where they're supposed to be? And it's none of my business. And my business is to just worry about
your business. Yeah.
My business. And wow.
Your business.
And I always used to tell my kids, I'd say, "Myob," like, mind your own business. Myob, myob.
I always think of that scene from The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, because that's the generation I grew up in, where I don't even remember the girl's name, but just mind your business. That's all. Mind your business.
It's
like,
true.
If we all just really would mind our own business, the world would be a much different place.
Seriously.
Because by minding our own business, we make ourselves better, and that in turn just makes the world, like, everyone's so caught up, especially these days, oh my gosh, in the last couple of years, with like trying to manage other people's behavior.
Oh my God. It is so obnoxious, and
it is.
Well, I think it's a divisive tool that's being used against us on purpose by mainstream media. I don't believe that. Honestly, I think it is a divisive tool.
Yeah.
And I say mainstream media, which is a puppet of other
They're
powers.
Just the spokespeople for the politicians, who are also spokespeople for
the banks, the central banks, and the money,
the force
printers.
of evil, the dark side, the dark side. Yeah.
But it's true, when you keep people afraid, and if you keep them worrying about other people,
policing
and how,
each other,
pitting against each other, you can control them, and you can deplete them of their life force energy to fight back against bullshit. And so that's, again, circling back to that, like being exhausted and not having enough time to parse through different information. And so you default to whatever seems to be in front of you instead of taking time. And I think that's the fiat loop that, once you wake up and you see, like, oh my goodness, I'm in this hamster wheel of this stuff, and I didn't realize that I'm actually feeding the hamster wheel by staying in the hamster wheel. And then it is intimidating and disorienting to jump off, into this new world. And I know that I wrote, I don't know if it was for the thing that we just wrote or an email, but it was just about questioning our sanity, like, is this real? Is Bitcoin real? Is, what else is not real? Is something else, like this whole world view of ours that we had for decades and decades that we, subscribed to, but still felt uneasy in our system. Like something's wrong here. This doesn't feel good or right, but I just don't know what the next thing is. But I think a lot of us people who are kind of waking up or angry, were like, oh, like that's what that was. It was like we were operating with like shackles in our soul and our mind because of the way that the money is and was. And
and I talk about it too. Like, it's like they say, if you take a healthy organism and put it into a toxic environment, and the healthy organism dies, it's not the fault of the organism, it's the toxic environment. And I've seen that, from being in the yoga space, the life coaching space for the last 10 years. And you and I have had this conversation also, where it's like, we had this vision for the future where we live together, we support each other. It's not all scarcity and money and just work until you die, but we didn't have, so we had that on the inside, but then we didn't have the external environment in which to make that happen.
Right.
And I think, a lot of people are still, we just we spin our wheels. We think, oh, there must be something wrong with me. There must be something I'm not doing, something I need to do better, another course I need to take. Like, I just saw this thing, this docuseries that's going to be coming out on Netflix in a few weeks about like how to fix your relationship with money. And it's like, how are we supposed to fix a relationship with something that is inherently broken and evil? Right?
That'll be interesting.
So this is like,
curious if they put Bitcoin on there at all.
Right? I'm sure not.
How to change your relationship with money so that you like crickets.
It's just, I went into Barnes and Noble last week, and it's like, you go into the finance system, and it's like, how to, all that. I'm like, all of these books are completely irrelevant. Anyways, the point of that is that I feel like right now is such a cool time because dreamers, creators, people that have had a hopeful and optimistic view, even with really no sense of there being a light at the end of the tunnel. Now it's like, oh my gosh, there is actually a way that we can construct and create this external environment so that we can align love on the inside, like the goal of human existence, that can actually be realized on the outside. Right.
Well, and I think feathering in the proof of work mindset that we get as Bitcoiners now. And I know a lot of people have already had that in their life. Like they get like, you work, you get something in life, and not always something fair because of systems, but like, the handout mindset is very fiat. Oh, let's go just put our money in and we're going to get this interest. It's like, well, for what? And it's like, if you don't know where the yield comes from, you're the yield. And so it's that gambling mindset, that get lottery ticket mindset that a lot of people have and our young people have. And Bitcoin is definitely shifting that into a place of, it's still like, yes, we have this tool, which is amazing. And we still have to have, life practices in place that will emulate the value of what it means to be a whole human. And that means to contribute. That means to pull out of yourself that which is excellent and great. And that means to develop and cultivate that and then use it for good, Batman. You know? And I really feel like there's this superhero ethos of a lot of Bitcoiners, and it's good, you know, because it's like we all understand we have these weaknesses, but we all have this vision toward, I say all. Yeah, I think so.
I think so too. I say all, and then I'm like, well, I'll put most in parentheses, but I'm like, no, all.
Yeah.
All, I think.
I think it's like once you get it, and you're like, oh, there's nothing else.
Because there's a difference between having Bitcoin and being a Bitcoiner.
That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is very true.
Yeah.
And
Bitcoiners see the truth. Like they see it.
It's undeniable.
Yeah. You can have Bitcoin and not be a Bitcoiner, and you can be a Bitcoiner and not have Bitcoin.
That's true, sister. I'm all like,
you know, I say that to people all the time. I'm like, you know, and people ask, like, I met this guy last week, and you're like, oh, is he a Bitcoiner? And I'm like, well, he is. He just doesn't have any Bitcoin yet.
He just doesn't know it yet.
Yeah, he just doesn't know it yet.
Yeah.
That might be the only reason to stay on dating apps, is just to like
just to orange pill people. I'm just gonna orange pill him via Tinder.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Oh, that's all.
But I was, you know, I think a big part of it too, and this is a topic of conversation, and I always say the Bitcoin community, and I know that's a major tenet, if not like the juice of the 11X program, is community, accountability, because you know, it's one thing to decide you want to do something, but then to hold yourself accountable is really, really hard.
It's really hard.
And I think we need people who will be radically honest with us.
Yeah.
And who we can be radically honest with. You know, like I think about friendship, relationships, and it's like we're very afraid of telling people the truth.
Oh my gosh.
Right?
Well, it's
a lot of the times, because we can't handle the truth. What's that, you know, movie? So we need to be able to handle the truth.
Yeah.
And we need to be able to tell the truth.
I agree.
About what is happening.
And it's that personal responsibility energy around being a Bitcoiner and holding your own keys, and you can't call customer service to get it back. That trickles into the personal responsibility of being able to receive the truth and speak the truth, even when it's uncomfortable, unpopular, doesn't feel good. You might lose somebody as a person in your life if you share your truth. So rather than hiding behind the masquerade of, you know, the old way of being with fiat, it's like, I think it helps us become, me personally, like, I definitely always want to be like WYSIWYG. What you see is what you get. And sometimes WYSIWYG, it's like an old thing, like with the way they used to do like programming for WYSIWYG. What you see is what you get.
Like, what would Jesus do?
Sort of like what would Jesus do, but it's WYSIWYG. And
I like WYSIWYG.
WYSIWYG's cool. And I like that idea of living a WYSIWYG lifestyle. However, when those of us are in that transition, and again, I'm not saying I'm some kind of perfect person, but when there's shame attached to the truth, when there's guilt attached to the truth, a lot of times we hide, and we might go like around it a little and try to be like, yeah, that's, you know, this and that. And so, you know, I had to have a tough conversation today, and it was like, okay, I can either try to like be righteous, and I can try to be the, you know, the right one and the better one. But the reality is I acted like an asshole and I made the situation worse. And so I had to come clean with my asshole behavior before we could even fix this other situation that was going on. And so if I hadn't have just gotten out of the defensive posture and be like, it's all you, that conversation would have went ugly.
Right.
And so for me, like, I learned
taking personal responsibility
for your assholeness. And
yeah. And again, that is how this whole like Bitcoin ecosystem is working. It's like, oh, I have to take responsibility for my money. Everything. I have to take responsibility for my keys. And if I lose my keys, I lose my money. And, you know, again, it's like we've been outsourcing all of our responsibility for so long.
We've been outsourcing the truth. We've been outsourcing like, oh, I trust my doctor, or I trust the politicians. Not that we ever trust politicians, or I trust the media or whoever.
Canada does, or used to.
Oh my God. I know.
That's how we ended up where we are.
It's crazy, man. It's just, it truly is now. And then now with information being a weapon, and it is a weapon of mass destruction, in my opinion. And when I did this episode with Tomer, we talked about spiritual terrorism and how I think that these powers that be are acting in a horrible way against us on purpose, you know, and it is designed to exhaust our physical being and our mind, so that our spiritual being, which wants to be free and wants to be fully expressed and different perhaps than what other people's vision is, gets less attention, because we're forced to be in conflict and survival mode and fear mode. And so I think that there is an external malicious attack that we constantly have to be aware of. And it takes, again, that personal responsibility for sifting through the shit and trying to align with like where are sources of truth. You know, that are
using
verifiable.
Using the truth to empower you and bring you closer to love and closer to God. You know, people don't want to talk about death because it scares them and it disempowers them. So, you know, we need to, I don't know, again, maybe community is part of it. We need to be able to look at things from a different perspective. And that's where other people come in really handy, you know, because you can use a tool to either empower you or disempower you.
Totally.
Like I find the conversation of death incredibly empowering because it makes every day sacred, even if it's monotonous, even if it fucking sucks and you have to have shitty conversations, right? It's like when you look at it from that lens, as opposed to, oh my God, my time is running out. You know, it's just but I never used to look at it that way, right? It took something. I don't really even know what that thing was, perhaps just like divine intervention for me to be like, oh, death is actually really empowering for us, you know, because we're going to go through it. So you have a choice. And I guess maybe that's where empowerment comes in. It's like, you don't have the ability to choose what happens, but you can choose how you interpret it and how you act on it. So recognizing that we have a choice to use even really scary things to alchemize those things into love and the sacred, you know.
But it takes that practice, like we were saying, that reminder to pause, that reminder to get present with the truth, you know, and the truth that you are divinely aligned always. It's just remembering, like, am I divinely aligned right now? Yes. Am I divinely aligned right now? Yes. We always are. We're always being held somehow. And those of us that are lucky enough to be in first world countries, you know, like we are not as taxed with the survival. I mean, we are taxed with a certain amount of survival mechanisms every day, but there are other folks who are like, where am I going to get a cup of water for my child today? You know, and that is, I think, because we know that, and I think we do see the world as one organism, just like we see Bitcoin as this one organism. It's not a node. It's not a Bitcoin. It's not a Bitcoiner. It's an organism. And, and it's infinitely interconnected, just like we are as humans, as we are with the water, as we are with the planets. And when you keep considering those things, you realize like, wow, like I got lucky. Like I got dealt the lucky hand up here in the USA, right? And so if I don't do something good with my hand, I'm a dick. And I don't want to be a dick. You know, I mean, there's that sense of like duty and obligation. If you don't 100%. Do something with this gift and you're aware that you have the gift and you're still squandering it because of old bullshit programming, that's a disservice to the gift that you were bestowed, you know?
And I think, you know, like I tend to look at the gift as like, okay, It needs to be something that impacts a massive amount of people and like changes the world, like Oprah level type stuff. Right. And again, so like zooming out is really helpful and zooming in is also really helpful, because really at the end of the day, if you can just help ease the suffering and thereby increasing the love of one other person, then that is enough. Right. So it's, and again, it's like, you learn how to dance between those two places, like being in the now and having the low time preference. It's also like, if what I produce, if what I put out there changes the whole world, like, oh my God, that'd be so great. Yay, open. Right. But it's also like, okay, first I need to change my world. And then if I can and by changing your world, you will change the world. Like you're not even going to have to try. It's just like osmosis. Right.
I say like inner peace, leads to world peace. And it's that, like we talked about, like you
be the change,
be the love now. And then because you're full, you can operate from a place of fullness and abundance, not a place of fear, duty that is like a guilt duty instead of like an overflow duty.
And that's where the fiat mindset continues, to infiltrate, right? Because we think like, okay, this thing, is it good enough? How am I going to make money? How much are people going to pay? Is this going to support me? Oh my God, how much more savings do I have left to get this thing off the ground?
Totally.
So there definitely is that. It plays into what I do and how I do it, and often gets me stuck, right? Like it would be really lovely just to produce and give freely from a place of abundance.
It's interesting. Last night, I don't know who it was on, but it was an author, and she had like, I want to say like 170,000 Twitter followers, but it said something like she's like completely reader supported. A reader supported author. And so that circles around to value for value and that idea of, there's obviously different structures of how to exchange value in the world. It could be a donation thing. It could be a set price. It could be whatever, you guys, individual agreements with people on things. But like as an accountant and business person, like I understand, like it's nice to go, yay, let's do all this value for value stuff. But the reality is there's also hard costs of operating businesses. There's hard costs. And so do we just all say, well, I hope somebody gives me some money today because I delivered some value? Or do you just say like, yeah, this is how I operate? And so I don't know if that's just because we have this, tool doesn't mean the mindset around how to exchange value and how to receive value is, it needs a lot of attention and massage. I don't think that there's just this one way to do it because of the psychology of value. And my dad always said, if it's free, take two. And, just because it was like, sweet, something's free, I want two. And so his mindset was always in a hoarding kind of scarcity, World War II, depression mindset. And so that trickled into me like, oh, you need to stock your cabinets. You need to have all this stuff. You need to be prepared for when winter comes, because it's coming, and Tony Robbins talks about that. All these different other spiritual teachers, we all talk about, the cycles of life. And so as much as, yay, it's summer, it's like fall's coming, you better harvest some shit so you don't starve during the winter. And then yay, the planting, and that is the truth of life and death and rebirth. Like, it's cyclical no matter what. There's never been anything that isn't following that pattern of nature. So why would we be the exception? And if
something is stagnant, it's already dead. And, I was thinking, I've been thinking about this too. Like if you don't have an open mind, if you don't have curiosity, if you don't have a willingness to listen and learn and take in different points of view, like if you have a closed mind, that mind is stagnant and you're already dead, really. It's like you're going down that same toboggan path over and over and over until the day you die. So it's like your future is already pre-planned.
Yep. I can't change. It's too late.
Yeah.
Not enough. It's all what's done is done. We got to just keep doing this horrible thing.
Yeah.
Like, in this moment, right now,
like
as you're watching this, as
Yeah.
we're watching this, we have a choice. You have a choice in this moment to pause. Allow yourself to just say, is this the direction I want to keep going in my life, in my relationship, or in my money, or in my health, or in my home, or in my anything? And you get the choice to say, yep, this is cool. I'm going to keep going. It's great. Or you have a choice to be like, actually, I kind of want to check this other thing out over here. No, in most countries, we're lucky again here. Most of us have the freedom to go do that.
Yeah.
And that is a blessing, right? Yeah. We do not have to keep doing that same thing. You know, certainly there will be consequences, but we still have the opportunity to change if we so desire. We don't have to live these other ways if we don't want it.
And I think, you know, like at least for me, you know, when I think about, do I want to keep living this way, or I'm going to change the trajectory of my life? Like that seems like, oh my gosh, I have to do this massive overhaul.
Yeah.
I've got to, you know, completely start doing things differently. But it's literally just, you know, like have a cup of tea instead of a cup of coffee.
Totally.
Or do what I did. Like, don't go to the gym, sit down and have a conversation.
Right.
Right. And it's like, it's just those little, it's like like the flap of the butterfly wing, right? That changes the course of the future.
It does. It's like micro steps equal macro progress.
Yeah. Like we're talking about what can people do on a daily basis. It's like, that's one of the things.
Yeah.
Notice where you get stuck habitually. And I'm just talking to myself here while I talk to everybody else, and notice the story that you tell yourself about that habitual behavior. Yeah. Like my story is, I'm not going to feel as good as I should feel if I don't do X, Y, Z.
Right.
Right. But then it's like, you and I are sitting down having this conversation, putting it out into the Twitterverse. Who knows? Maybe someone will be like, oh, do you want to write a book about this? And I'll be like, fuck yeah. You know, that was the one thing I was waiting for. Because, and I'm not going to, like, it's uncomfortable for me. Like, it's uncomfortable for me to choose to not go to the gym and to do something else, because I have convinced myself that this is how I'm the best version of myself.
Well, let's talk about this for a second, because we talked about it before we hit live, but we talked about the, when I was doing like the yoga for 12-step teacher training, my teacher would ask, like, if you're 5 minutes late for something, right? Why are you stressed out? And do you future trip? And then what happens when you future trip? And so whether you're missing, you know, choosing a different thing, like not working out first and then doing this conversation, the mind has a tendency, if you keep asking it, to go where? To death. I'm dying alone with squirrels eating your face off in the park. And it goes from, oh, what if I'm late? Oh, then your boss will get upset. Oh, your boss gets upset. You don't get the raise. You don't get the raise. You don't get the girl. You don't get the girl. You're depressed, and you're going to start going and doing stupid things. Now you're doing stupid things. Now you're bankrupt. Now you're in the fucking gutter. And now there's squirrels eating your face off because you were 5 minutes late.
The squirrels are thriving, but
the
you
squirrels,
are not.
You're fucked. But those squirrels, man.
Squirrels have never been better fed.
Fucking Alvin and the Chipmunks are having themselves a little buffet with your little self. But it's true, right?
Yeah,
and so it's like,
totally.
that's, if you keep going to the root why, it always boils down to dying alone.
Always. Fear of death.
Yeah.
Fear of being alone.
Yeah. And it's like that.
And the truth is, we are going to die, and you kind of are always alone.
Yeah.
In here, like inside of our own experience, we're always alone. No matter, you and I could spend the rest of our lives together sharing every fucking thought that crosses our mind, and I would still never know what it feels like to be Val, and you would still never know what it feels like to be me. So in that way, like, you are going to die alone. So it's like, okay, my worst fear is actually going to happen.
Totally.
And that, again, like, that can be empowering instead of disempowering.
Totally. And something we avoid and don't talk about, and you know, don't talk about. It's a scary thing for a lot of people to think of it.
Yeah.
Because it's the old way.
You know, for me, it just helps me to be ballsier. in, you know, taking more risks, just getting out there, doing things, because what's that saying? Like everything matters absolutely and nothing matters
Absolutely
at the same time,
matters.
right?
Yeah.
Because it's like, no matter what I do, one day I won't be here.
Yeah.
So in that way, like that's very freeing, because you really can do whatever the fuck you want, because one day you're not going to be here. And that is also motivation to like that legacy aspect. And, you know, I mean, I think you make a difference in the soup of human consciousness, right? Whether you're actively writing a book or doing a podcast or whatever it is that you're putting out there, you are contributing to this greater expansion. But it's like knowing that you're going to die gives you permission to do the things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And do them fully without permission and regret and feeling like I did this, you know, Frank Sinatra, and I did it my way. Right. Like it's legit. That's a song that's very popular for a very real reason, is because you do reach a certain point in life and you start to wake up to the truth that like nobody really gives a shit what you're doing. They don't.
Yep.
You know, they think they do, and they think they might want to go control some other things, but for the most part,
like the people that announce that they're going off social media for a month, and then you don't even notice they're gone.
I know. It's like, really? I know.
Or they announce their comeback and you're like, oh, I didn't even realize you weren't here.
Yeah. And that's a sad thing, obviously, in real human life.
Yeah.
But
it's also full permission to just like go balls to the wall,
do your thing.
Shit, like whatever the thing is.
Pink hair, jump out of a plane, whatever the hell you want to do. Like
people are so wrapped up in their own like neuroses and their own self-interest that like, you know, they really don't notice what other people are doing.
And it's just this,
which seems counterintuitive, because then you're like, well, then why should I care? Why should I try to make the world a better place or put something out there that will help people?
Personally, for me, that the answer to that question is it feels better vibrationally in the consciousness soup when the world is operating from a place of love and pleasure and ecstasy and bliss and connection. I feel better. So selfishly, I want to make the world better because I want to feel better too. And so that's a truth that I think we can all relate to.
And I think that's, you know, like being in service to God. Like that's about your relationship to God and allowing God to work through you.
Exactly.
Right.
And really it's that, you know, it is that divine connection and that divine dance. And it does fucking feel good. You know, like it feels nice. And wouldn't it be nice if we all felt this nice, you know? And there's a shit show and it's the opera and the world and up and down and tragedy and pain. That's unavoidable. Unavoidable. But it's like, we certainly have the capacity in our hearts and our resourcefulness that needs to get more activated. We have the resources to make this world a better place for most everybody, you know, who wants to show up and participate. I believe that. I believe we have some missing resourcefulness and some missing incentives. And again, that incentive structure around the old way of being is what has kept the power dynamic so fragile. And then it doesn't allow people for that creative expression into like, what if we could all just work on being these amazing versions instead of, oh, I've got to fucking fight to survive each day just to get by.
Totally.
And then these guys are over here keeping you down so that they can stay up. And I think that we have a chance with this new tool to shift that.
Totally. Mind your business
and
do God's work.
Do God's work.
Basically. And like, it doesn't really matter if everybody had that as the goal, right? So it's like, don't do things to please or try to change the lives of other people or manage other people's behavior. It's like, get your own shit together. And then do your best to tune into the ways in which God, the creative force of God, is attempting to work through you. And then just do that. Do your work in service to God. And then, you know, maybe other people pick it up. Maybe they don't. But it's like, that's not really what matters perhaps ultimately, right? Like we're in this ever expanding universe that is just constantly reaching and moving towards, like we're hurtling forward through space towards what? No one knows. Why, like what are we doing? So I don't really know where I was going with that, but like we don't know what the plan is or what the purpose is. But if you have that connection to God, spirit, source, universe, nature, love, they're all one and the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then how can I continue to expand and reach with my soul, with my heart towards that thing that we're all moving towards collectively? Maybe one day we arrive. I don't know. And we're not going to be here to find out because we're going to be dead.
Or if the journey is just the journey itself. And that's like, as a sailor and somebody who loves the ocean and being on the water, like I remember like the man who introduced me to sailing, he was very philosophical. I loved it. He was very much into, expanding himself, but he was in this old system too. He's a Bitcoiner and didn't know it. But this was back in the early 90s. But we talked a lot about Ram Dass and being here now, and he was really into that idea, But as a sailor, especially if you're in a fucking storm, you're not looking back at the wave that just passed your you're not looking back at the transom going, look at that wave. Oh my God. It's like really like, it's kind of unbalanced. It's like, what a stupid wave. Like you are fucking in the moment dealing with what's in front of you. You can't see 3 waves ahead of you because you can't. And your job as a great sailor to stay safe and to enjoy the ride is to be present. Be this like surfing, right? We were talking about surfing earlier and how big wave surfers need to, they got to check shit out before they go in, and then when they're on it, it's like, well, I'm here. You're not thinking about, did I get groceries yesterday? Or,
it's a matter of life or death to be present.
Exactly.
Or not be present.
And so it's like, can we apply those same principles to each moment, even in the mundane?
That's when it gets hard, right? Because like, when it's a matter of survival, it's like that, again, like that reptilian brain takes over and we don't make a conscious choice to be present. We have to be like, the body just goes there. So in being there in those mundane moments, that's a whole other, like that is a real practice.
Totally.
A real practice.
But again, it's that we can, when we drive the toboggan or the truck, repeatedly, whether we're in heightened situations or calm situations, we want to train ourselves to operate in that default power mode in the now. And again, definite student of this. All student. I don't know. I still, even like maybe all the monks who sit in the caves forever, but I don't know. Like, here's the thing that I don't get. This is what is, I've never seen a study done like this. It doesn't mean it hasn't been, but I haven't seen one. And I think there's a great reason why. How there's those studies where they'll take the monks who've been meditating for 25, 30, 40, 50 years, and they'll put the little things on them. And then they'll give them a trigger, and then they can calm themselves down with the trigger with these things on. Right. Well, that's nice if you're lucky enough to have not had to be a parent. If you're a monk, and all you do is practice every day, getting those, those pathways just like dialed in. What about the rest of us schlubs? Like the rest of us schlubs, particularly moms whose bodies have been disfigured hormonally because of giving birth, and we never, ever, never bounce back to where we once were. So that means not only do the physical body chemicals and all that, our brain chemicals don't ever go back. And we are programmed in a state of protection when we are parents, especially moms. And we are programmed to like, mama bear. And so that shifts as a human and how we can go operate and be monks in the world. And I'd be curious, like, are there any studies with mom meditators and mom practitioners and seeing like, how do their brains maybe differ than monk practitioners? Because I would be curious to observe that protection mechanism that is biologically triggered somehow in us. There's something like, before I had kids, I was not like, I mean, I was sort of protective of other people and their kids, but I wasn't like, I didn't have that motherly instinct. It wasn't there. And this comes with a lot of women that I've spoken with, that they change, and they all of a sudden it's like, don't mess with the kids and all this, especially if we've spent time with like other people's kids in like mommy and me groups or things like that. We get more.
And I noticed that as a woman without kids. I am definitely the you before kids that you speak of.
Right? I know. And it's like, you don't know what you don't know until it physically happens in your brain. And then it's not like
it actually changes your brain chemically.
Totally. Yeah. And you can't go back. There's no like, oh, I don't want this anymore. Well, too bad. It's just like this is the new you. And you have to figure out how to navigate that in a way that's helpful for the future, and not just like, oh, well, this is fucking it. It's a difficult thing, I think. And, so we all have our challenges of staying grounded, staying centered, staying here now, being, in a place of conscious awareness, around our death, around our inspired life. What are the choices that we want to make, like right now in this moment?
Yeah.
Do I want to keep pushing play on those old records of fear and doubt and uncertainty and can't and not enoughness and all those things? Or do I wish to like keep pushing play on a new song that I want to sing, and a new song that I want to hear, and a new opportunity that I want to create?
And what's that like? I think, what's the serenity prayer? It's like, God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change. The courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference.
Difference, motherfucker.
Yeah. And that, I was thinking like, so much of this, I think also really does come with age. Like literally, the closer you are to death, as you get older, like you do start to think about things differently and approach your life differently. And that's not to say that there aren't things that, people in their teens and 20s and 30s can do. Like there absolutely is. I just think it becomes more real as you get older.
Yeah.
And you do acquire the wisdom to be able to decipher between, do I have control over this? Do I not? Right. What conscious choices can I make so that, maybe I can shift the direction this is going in? What do I need to just learn how to navigate differently, because that shit ain't gonna change, Yeah.
Yeah. Wisdom and age are a bonus, and you get a lot more wisdom if you're paying attention, and then it's up to us to apply it.
It's so weird. Like the outside starts falling apart, but the inside is like better than ever. Like it's just so weird. Like in your youth, you're just beautiful and vibrant, but you're like an empty vessel on the inside. Totally. Or you're just confused. Like you have no idea what's going on. I don't even remember myself in my 20s and 30s. Like I don't even know who that person was anymore.
Oh, nightmare.
But it's like
20-something street.
Oh man, it's like I've never felt better, but it's like I noticed the gray hair and I noticed the bags under my eyes, and it's like that's a whole other, especially for women, like that is a whole other situation.
I think it's both. I mean, I believe that men go through the same exact midlife change as we do. They get bald, they get pudgy, their dick doesn't work the way that it used to, all of it, right? Like we have the same shit, and we have the same self-consciousness stuff, we operate differently because of the ticking biological clock of reproduction and stuff like that. So it does shift, I think. Whereas men, if they decide like, I'm Hugh Hefner and I'm 70 and I want to go have a kid.
I'm Larry King, and there really needs to be more of me.
You can go leave your spawn juice wherever, and the shit works. So it's different. I think we have different, for sure, experiences with it, and we handle it differently. But I do believe, coming back to this inspired living, coming back to focusing on our death every day, you know, today is a good day to die. It's okay. Like if I died today, do I feel happy at the end of the day?
Yeah.
Like, did I live a full day?
Yeah. That's a good question to ask in the morning and in the evening. Yeah. Because in the evening, I find if I don't think about that until the evening, I do have like, oh, could have done this, I could have done that. Right. But if you think about it in the morning, then you're able to, like, there's more proactivity that can happen.
And so if you died at the end of the day, if you knew you were going to die today at whatever, midnight.
Well, we got to get some heroin, first of all.
We're like, where's the death river and the smack?
You got to drive me to Melissa's house.
We're going to go get some smack, Val. Oh my God. That's our dream, is to finally do heroin for once. Our death river.
That's
with
our
fireworks
dream.
up. It's my dream.
That's my dream. I just want to do heroin.
And then I want everybody around me to do ecstasy and acid.
Yeah.
Mostly,
and blow you up with fireworks.
Fireworks. I want to get exploded. It's exploding, Lucy. She's exploded.
We'll get one that explodes in like the shape of a heart.
Yay!
And, like, rainbows.
I love it. A heart rainbow. Like that would be the coolest shit ever. Like I totally want to go to my death. Like that's whose death I want to go to. That would be so much fun.
Yeah.
But like just today, as an example, let's say today, what was that? Don't look up. That meteor is coming at midnight. What must you do before you die tonight at midnight, Erin?
Just call all the people I know and tell them I love them.
Yeah. Me too.
That's it.
That's it.
Even the people that, you know, I wouldn't consider my best friends, or, you know, just like everyone I have on social media, or, right? Whatever. Yeah. I'd have a lot of phone calls to make.
A lot of phone calls.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that would be it. And probably like, what's the Ho'oponopono?
Ho'oponopono.
I've never been able to say that, but you live in Hawaii. So.
Ho'oponopono.
It's like, I'm sorry. Please forgive me.
Thank you. I do. I love you. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Thank you. Yeah. I always start with I love you. Some people do I love you at the end. I like to start with I love you.
Yeah.
But do whatever you want.
Like we think like, oh, I don't have anything to apologize for. But, you know, like there's, oh my gosh, like there are so many moments where I've withheld love or withheld appreciation because of whatever drama was going on inside of my head.
I'll show you.
Exactly. But you know, you realize at the end, like all those moments where you withhold love and, you know, affection, whatever, like you're not, you're just hurting yourself by doing that.
Exactly. There's this like self-righteousness that we get of like, oh, well, if I'm not going to condone that behavior, so I'll pull some love away.
Yeah. Or I'll punish you.
I'll show you by not doing this or doing this. And it's old thinking. It's not the way that we wish to be in an evolved state. That's for sure. But it does take that ego like conversation of like, dude, I know you think you're protecting me from getting hurt again by this person or this experience or, you know, whatever it is, but you're making things worse. Yeah. So I love you, ego. I'm going to give you a hug and you can go away and you're serving some purposes, but you're creating disconnection with source and with this other human.
Yeah.
And we're going to do we're going to do an ego death, talk at some point with Tomer and Svetsky.
Yeah, you need to get that organized.
And so to me, that's like a thing of the ego getting in the way of connecting our hearts with each other. Yeah. Because it thinks it's protecting us. And in some cases, it is. Yeah. Yes, and it's doing its job, but it can also overdo its job. You know, and that's kind of where I think the higher voice and spiritual consciousness comes in. It's like, who's got the mic? Is it the fear protector ego? Is it the spiritual love connection that lives within us? And so we have to understand like who's holding the mic in our internal dialogue, which in turn is our external actions and the way that we are in the world. And so,
and I think too, you know, you can use the word death in many different ways, right? Like death doesn't mean the end forever. Right. It means, you know, the ending of one way of being, but the beginning of another way of being. Totally. So people think like, oh, I have to abolish my ego. It's like, no, you're never going to do that. But can your ego take on different characteristics? Can it have a different nature moving forward? Like, just like every in-breath is the death of every out-breath.
Yep.
And, you know, like there is literally death in every moment, but it's not this black nothingness in the way that a lot of people think about when they think about death. It just means like an ending, and it's a renewal.
Yeah, it is. And I think that's the misnomer that some people have about ego death. It doesn't mean you're not going to have your ego.
Yeah.
It means the construct that it was up until this moment is open to get, it can be malleable. Like you want that malleability of letting go of the things that aren't serving this higher mission of being love, you know? And it's like,
and that's where the pause comes in so handy.
Yeah.
Because you can go, okay, pause. Am I going to go into this situation with my ego forward, or is the ego going to be in the back seat? If the ego does need to be forward, how does the ego show up? How can the ego serve in a healthy, wholesome, loving way, as opposed to just this protection, you know, armored sort of a way?
Exactly. Yeah, I think about like the way that police are trained. You know, there's different like intervention techniques that they can be trained, where they can come and use aggressive force and hurt somebody and overpower them. And it's just my way or the highway, fuck you. That's one way to have situational control, but it creates a lot of shit in the wake. Otherwise, there's other situations where it's like, okay, the protector, the ego, can come in and be a warrior in a strong, grounded, peaceful way, and not in a let's just power over and blunder the situation with my agenda.
There's like the immature ego and like the wise ego.
You know, and I think about, I don't know if it was you were telling me this or somebody was telling me about like somebody would have bouncers at like their club that were trained in like controlling situations in a very like cool way, not like the dumb doofusy like bouncer who wants to come in and just like throw his, you know, his muscles around, and
like nonviolent communication or whatever.
Totally. Like those guys who are just kind of like, I'm watching this. I got it. We're cool.
We're
cool. Oh, we're okay. Let's go see. And so that's how I want to keep sculpting my ego going forward, is in that position, but not in a position to inhibit what's going on, which hopefully is cultivating love, you know? And so, but it takes time. The ego
and practice,
a lot of practice,
and making a lot of mistakes
and reflections. And that's where we get in the community with each other, and people who are trusted with each other's vulnerability, you know, and not judging because you fucked that one up. Way to go. Stupid.
And having the courage to ask, like, how did I show up this past week?
Right.
What are my blind spots? You know, because, you know, listen to us talk. We have it all together. Right. But it's like, we all have blind spots, and I don't know, like other people's feelings are not our responsibility, which is true. And it's helpful to recognize how it does affect other people, the way that we show up.
Totally.
Right. And it's all just information. It's more opportunity for learning. It's, you know, just the chance to go deeper within yourself, to go deeper with your connections to other people. You know, it's like I look back on the majority of my relationships in, you know, friendships, romantic, family, whatever. And it's like, oh my gosh, like we talked about this at the beginning, but we just try to keep everything comfortable.
Oh yeah.
You know, and we like
peacekeepers.
We don't want to tell the truth. And it's like, gosh, we are just not doing ourselves or each other any favors by not telling the truth.
No.
Yeah.
It's in that, again, circling back to the personal responsibility, circling back to valuing trust and truth and transparency. As Bitcoiners, it comes into that, like, how are we communicating with ourselves, with each other? Are we operating authentically? Are we operating compassionately? Doesn't mean you need to be a doormat to be a compassionate person. And I think I learned that.
It's actually the opposite.
It is. And I really feel like when I first started learning about codependency, when I first started learning about different behaviors that I had adopted over the years in my marriage, I was just like really defensive to the idea of being codependent, and then I started realizing like, wow, we both kind of did this thing in our marriage, and it made me more in like a victim mindset kind of thing, and trying to be responsible for this other person in ways that I have zero business doing and zero capability to do, and vice versa. And so that was a big wake up call too, just about like, wow, I was really not minding my own business. I was not minding my own business.
So hard to mind our own. No one told us just mind your own business.
I know. And it's hard. Like, well, it's one thing if you're in a relationship as a friend. It's another if you're in a relationship as a business person. It's another because you have shared responsibilities to achieve a certain outcome versus just a friendship, right? Or an acquaintance. It's another if you're in an intimate relationship where you share living, where you have to figure out agreements and how do things work. And I don't like that you leave the toilet seat up or whatever the fuck. It's a whole nother thing when you have children on top of it that you don't
it makes me overwhelmed just to think about it.
Oh my God.
Like, how are you still alive?
I know. It's insane. I mean, seriously, like the idea of, I mean, I'm not trying to be like, whatever. It's just like, I didn't know what I was getting myself into, honestly. And this is why I almost got fixed in my 20s. Cause I was just like, I don't have the tools and the capability to deal with this yet. And clearly in some ways I did, in some ways I did not. And I wish for anyone who's listening, if you're thinking about becoming a parent, whether you're a man or a woman, like do the work on yourself first. Get to know your trauma, get to know, and some people think trauma means you have to have been raped or experienced war, and that's not true. If your mommy didn't give you an ice cream cone in aisle 3 when you were 6 years old, and that made you feel not cared for, possibly that imprint is what actually is driving the bus for you on a daily basis and not feeling good enough or whatever, unworthy. And so really starting to understand yourself is such a key ingredient.
And why you do the things you do.
Yeah. Like what motivates you, what demotivates you, what repulses you.
What makes you feel reactive, because that's usually the key indicator.
Yeah.
Right.
It's like what are your like what's your threat model for becoming triggered? I remember like learning about that word triggered, and people they're using trigger. And I'm just like, oh, it's so ridiculous.
I heard one of my teachers,
but it makes sense. You need to know these things.
Yeah.
It's your villain.
One of my teachers, she uses the word evoked instead of triggered. And I like that because I feel like triggered is another one of those overused words. But what makes you feel evoked? What makes you feel,
like pricked. And it's definitely, I call it one of the villains, and it's like the thing can be the thing, but it's like, how are you going to respond to the thing, whatever the thing is? And that's where that pause comes in. That's where that checking in with yourself throughout the day comes in. That's where, when you don't have it together, the 3 words, I need help, with a trusted friend.
Or a therapist.
Or
a 1-800 number.
Something. Like just that can make all the difference in the world.
There's really there are, but to live an unexamined life, like there's so many resources out there now.
There's no excuse at this point for not living an examined life. And
unless you're just completely like, addicted to, you're just completely numb to reality.
If you're interested in the lie and the facade and the illusion that we've been fed, then keep on, but that's not required. It sounds kind of culty. It's not required to live the old way. You can live our new way. But it's true. It really is. And it's disorienting again when you start shifting your worldview towards one of absolute personal responsibility. And it can be a little intimidating. And it's that, to me, that's that maturity bridge going from the young years in our evolution to being an adult and being responsible for your shit. It's that, but way bigger even, and I think a lot of people get stunted emotionally in their teen years
Oh, yeah.
And they still are operating as
before that even.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're operating as teenagers with credit cards, and we haven't taken the time to emotionally mature, especially if we come from broken families, especially if there's drugs and alcohol in the situation. And rather than learning inquisitive practices about yourself, rather than learning, if I don't feel comfortable, I'm just going to go smoke weed, or I'm going to go drink, or whatever, because that's what everyone's doing around me. You default into this pattern of avoidance and numbing.
Yeah.
And just kind of being a little cork in the river, kind of, okay, and so at some point with our emotional and spiritual maturity, we become the boat and we become the captain, and we can understand how the water and the wind work, instead of just being a little floaty around the river, but it's difficult. Like, I have 2 teenagers, and the challenge I face with them is the programming that they're in the soup of. They're in this mainstream world. They're in the mainstream high school. They don't want to go and travel around the world and do all that with me. They're like, we want to do this. And so it's a huge challenge to try to raise conscious and aware children if I don't have a partner who's trying to do the same thing with me, and if they're constantly being manipulated by these multi-billion-dollar, trillion-dollar organisms that don't have our best interests or their best interests at heart.
Yeah.
I feel like I don't feel powerless to the point where I want to give up, but I feel very like, wow, this
you're kind of at the mercy of.
I don't get to control this situation or the outcome. I get to add to it, hopefully, my experience as a woman and a mom and a person, but they have their own karma and how it's going to go. It's a weird thing.
Yeah.
It's really weird.
Must be.
Like, when they're little, you have a lot more, control over, okay, you're not going to have play dates with those friends. You're not going to put red ink on the wall, all that shit. Right. But when they're older, they're just like, okay, I'm not in the house and you don't know where I'm at, and you don't know what I'm doing with this little gadget that's in my pocket. And you have to trust so much that hopefully you've done a decent job of making, good decision makers. Speaking of one coming down the stairs. How's it going, dude?
Good.
You feeling okay? Did you eat your soup? One of them's homesick. But it's a tough one.
Yeah.
And that's
I mean, I'm trying to imagine. I'm trying to put myself in that space. Yeah.
And it's an act of surrender. It's an act of faith.
Yeah.
And it's an act of just do the best you can with what you got right now.
And you just fucking pray.
I do pray a lot.
Yeah.
Prayer works, man. I really believe it does. It helps relieve my nervous system, if nothing else.
Yeah.
If nothing else, if it's just all hocus pocus and woo-woo, and if it gives me a feeling of a little bit of ease, then it works.
That's another one of those things too that's really interesting. We kind of talked about being in the flow state, the survival instinct, and how when you really are faced with life and death, it's automatic, right? You don't have to think about it. Prayer is the same. You grow up, if you never went to church, you never had, you considered yourself an atheist. What happens when someone you love is in, ICU, or you're, please God.
Yeah.
It's like,
are you there? It's me, Margaret.
Isn't that so interesting though?
Totally. We all want to go back to God.
Or
when
during sex.
Yeah.
You're like, oh my God. Isn't that so interesting?
I do think it is interesting.
Yeah. It's like God is another kind of just this instinctive default that we go to without consciously thinking about it.
Isn't it funny that we go to it when we're in our most heightened state of ecstasy, bliss, orgasm, and we go to it when we're this close to death and losing something that is sacred and precious to us, like another human or our own life.
Yeah.
And that says a lot, so it's like, well, why not stay in that state of connectedness with the divine all throughout the day, as much as we can consciously give ourselves, that awareness and that pause to like, am I connected? Of course you're connected. You always are. But we forget because this little thing wants to think it's in control.
Yeah. Ugh. And we have things we want to do and things to take care of and like
Oh man.
Yeah.
All right, so this was a good episode. What do you think? Bitcoin death and inspired living.
I think so.
I think it's great. I don't, hopefully you guys get something out of this, and hopefully, Erin and I chatting here and there will be able to.
Yeah. I mean,
just touch on stuff.
I'm just trying to make sense of it all, right? Like we're all just trying to make sense of it all.
Yeah.
And how it relates to love and God and Bitcoin and,
Yeah. Like where's the intersection of the philosophical and the spiritual, and where's the intersection of the practical and the mundane?
Yeah.
And how do we dance all of those rhythms together?
Yeah.
And because you really, that's to me the gift of a full life.
Yeah.
Is all of it.
Yeah.
And
it's so interesting that it's a real topic of conversation in the Bitcoin community.
Yeah. We love all you guys are inspiring us to have more conversations with you and with each other. And it feels really,
we're all trying to figure out like, why? What is it about Bitcoin that's having this happen?
I know.
It's so interesting.
It is interesting. And I just feel like it's just we're just scratching the surface. Like it really does feel like we're going, we're coming for you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. And I feel like it's just the beginning. And I really believe like the more that we can keep the conversation centered toward our hearts.
Yes.
And centered toward staying connected with our own version of the divine and in honoring the divine in each other. They say namaste in yoga, and they say satnam and kundalini yoga. It's like the divine in me. I see the divine in you. And when we can truly remember, that's not just a thing to say and give lip service to and make a t-shirt and sound cool like I'm a yogi. It's like that's part of the practice. That's it. That is observing and being having the awareness of the divine within yourself at all times, and then knowing that like everyone else has this divinity too. And it's not easy. It is not motherfucking easy, dude. Because like you want to make the enemy, somebody needs to be the enemy, and that's the old thinking. And
and even when it is easy, it's not easy, right? Like it's not just like looking at a murderer and being like, I see God. It's looking at your best friend and not looking at Val as Val with Val's ego and Val's whole situation going on here. It's like, oh, hi God.
Hi God. And hi God. Like, hi God.
Me, you, like again, like that thin line of separation. There's a thin line of separation between everything.
Yeah. And I think that thin line of separation truly simply is the story that we tell ourselves. It's not real.
Yeah.
Like, and that's again, if you go out and then go all the way in on the tiny, whatever quantum level or whatever level you get down to, it's like, we're all the same shit.
Yeah.
And so that's where it's, if you scope out, like we're all on planet Earth, we're all human, we're all in the same solar system. It's like, we are all connected. And so that illusion of that line is a story that we tell ourselves.
Yeah.
And it's a story that we tell ourselves, and it causes us to behave in certain ways that maybe aren't aligned with love. Us versus them, and whatever that looks like. And so that's why I like Bitcoin, because it's like there's room for everybody to participate in this.
Yeah.
It's not like an us versus them, good guys versus bad guys,
and there's the potential for everybody to be made better or to become better because of it. Like we should want the people we don't like to come into Bitcoin. We should want our enemies to come into Bitcoin, because we've all seen the ways in which it helps to, move your consciousness, your evolution, your enlightenment forward. So it's like, yeah, we want to bestow that gift onto everybody.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there's conversations right now being had about like tornado cash and people worrying about blocks from North Korea and all this stuff, with Bitcoin. And I think they're valid conversations. And the reality is it's like the internet. You can't just decide like, okay, we don't like Russia or we don't like the purple country, so we don't want it using the internet. It's like, we're not going to not make the internet because we're worried about that. Like, it's a service to humanity to have the internet. And so I feel like, Bitcoin is the same. And so rather than worrying about the bad guys using it, why don't we do something where we can help the bad guys maybe not feel like they need to be bad? Like, that to me is a bigger, that's where I want my sights versus like the cancel exclusion, kind of thing. And so, I mean, can you imagine a world where the internet was so censored that it wasn't available in these certain countries? Like, who decides who's worthy of having this communication mechanism?
I mean, I can imagine it because it kind of already happens.
It's like North Korea,
right?
You can't like,
and just with the level of censorship that's happened over the last 2 years,
right? And it's not good. We don't want that. Like, it's words, it's code, and it's language.
It's either one or the other. Like, again, going like circling all the way back, it's a matter of like getting your shit together, minding your business, and just, it's either a free for all or it's not. Like, it's either uncensored or it's censored. So we need to have the fortitude emotionally, mentally, and spiritually to deal with it.
Yeah. And that's where we have to have our own unique daily practice.
Yeah, personal responsibility.
What do you do on a daily basis that makes you unruggable, that makes you just the best version of yourself up to this point? Because hopefully tomorrow you have a new best version of yourself, and the next day, and the next day, and comparing yourself to yourself.
Yeah.
And there's a multitude of practices that we can all have, and it's our job to treat ourselves as the guinea pig of life. There's no right or wrong way to have your daily power and peace and warrior practice. But I can say that if you don't choose to try to have one and have conscious awareness, you're putting yourself at a disadvantage.
Yeah.
You're putting yourself at a disadvantage for your ability to have more freedom and choices in the future. Because if you're operating from a place of just reaction, you're not necessarily in a place of your own ultimate power.
And if you think about, shit hitting the fan, food shortages, energy shortages, fiat system collapsing, like there's going to be more challenge for us to deal with than just what's going on in here and in here. Right. So, there is a sense of, preparing the self for the betterment of humanity, and preparing the self for when shit hits the fan, because it's not really a matter of if, it's kind of when.
It's when.
And how
it's always when.
It's always when.
It's always when. And then there will be a new shitting fan cycle at some point with something else that comes as a result of this
round and round shitting. Round and round we go.
It's not going to end. And so that's the essence, is it never ends until you die.
Yeah.
And then you get a possible new round of curriculum in your shitting cycle.
Yeah. So it's same thing, right? Yeah. Prepare yourself for death. It's coming. You just don't know when. Prepare yourself for the zombie apocalypse. It's coming. You just don't know when.
Make the most of each moment, each breath.
Prepare yourself for your card breakdown. It's probably going to happen. You just don't know when.
Totally. But don't not live.
Yeah.
Like, don't stop living because you're preparing for this thing. Like, that's the thing.
Use the thing to actually live.
Yeah. And be stoked for today and be like,
and that's like, for me, that was, one of the biggest crimes against humanity over the last 2 years was we're all operating on this fixed amount of time. And yet we all had that time taken from us, like we missed holidays with family. We had to stop working. We, some places you couldn't even go to the park, it's like,
It's ridiculous.
It's not worth it, you know, like,
But
you've prevented death, but you've also caused death at the same time.
Exactly.
Right?
And many different types of death. Exactly.
Again, life becomes static. And if you're static, you're dead, because that's just, you know, so we need to be mindful of that. And that's what really boggled my mind about people's views on the whole thing over the last couple of years, was like, oh, the sacrifice is worth it. It's like, really? If, you know, is it really worth it if grandma dies while everyone's locked down? Or would you rather have seen grandma?
Exactly.
You know, and there's no right or wrong answer.
Yeah.
But it's really something to deeply consider. Like, we're sacrificing time and our lives either way. So which way are you going to go? Like, are you going to sit in a padded room and never meet challenge and uncertainty? And therefore you are like, life is just passing you by? Or are you going to go out there and live life? Are you going to go surf the wave and maybe risk drowning? Right. But at least you're out there experiencing, and everybody gets to choose, but therein lies the difference. It's, you know, choice. But we were told this is what you have to do.
Yeah.
You know, and that's where, you know, it's so many new Bitcoiners were minted over the last couple of years, because we're like, fuck that, you know.
I know, dude. And I know I reframe it a little bit to be like, oh, if we didn't have lockdowns, I wouldn't have spent all that time on YouTube learning about Bitcoin and shit.
Sure. Yep.
And it's at the same time, it's like, would I trade that and not be a Bitcoiner so that grandma and we couldn't have the lockdown? I don't know. I don't have that choice to go back and turn the dial, but I'm glad I'm a Bitcoiner now.
Sure.
And what are we going to do with it? That's it. It's just, what do we get to do with it going forward? I think that's sort of our task, you know, our spiritual task is what to do with it going forward.
Yeah.
Always.
How to take the circumstances, the situation you are dealt, and how to use it to your highest and best good.
Yeah.
As you often say.
Highest and best.
Yeah.
And it's definitely that was something that I was taught, gosh, I want to say over 30 years ago, because I remember always thinking like, oh, I want to manifest this exact thing, or I want to, you know, do this one thing, and I hope the outcome is just like this.
Yeah.
And I would craft this vision up in my head of what this outcome was supposed to be.
Yeah.
And I would get attached to that thing instead of attaching myself to the prospect of whatever the highest and best outcome is for all parties throughout all space and time. So thinking implications of generational things as well. And I remember when I learned that concept, it just changed my whole way of not feeling so attached to like, oh, I hope my kid goes to college, or I hope I get this guy, or I hope I have this money, or I hope I have, it's just more like, what's going to be the highest and best good for myself, you know, and how can I magnetize that in, and then how can I repel the things that aren't, you know, and it's still that clarity that comes like when I do this like 11x love code thing, you get really clear on these things. You don't get attached. Can't get attached. Just put it out there and it will do what it needs to do in this universal soup, I think.
Allow it to show up in the way that it shows up, and allow the outcome to be what the outcome is. Yeah.
It's like the Stones song, right? You can't always get what you want, but sometimes you get what you need. And so that's super important, you know, of learning about how to go about this and keep a mental state that feels, you know, clear, yet in the flow of what's in front of you, and not feeling disappointed because it didn't.
Yeah, exactly. And like you're constantly battling against things that you have no control over.
Yeah.
So
and then
like,
you're in this state of disappointment and judgment and all the thing. And it's kind of like, that's not the frequency that
it's like the universe is giving you these gifts. You just don't recognize them because they're not, you know, it's not the new pair of shoes that you thought you wanted. It's the new coat or whatever. Yeah. It's like we miss, again, I'm just talking to myself here. Like, I feel like we miss so many of those gifts because we're looking just for one specific thing to show up in one specific way.
Exactly.
But it's like, oh, actually all the things I think I want, I don't know I want, all the things that are meant to show up are showing up.
Yeah.
I'm just not able to see them because you're like stuck in this you know, maybe your rigid mindset or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
You think you have it all planned out. You have this focus.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a path to definite disappointment and
Yeah.
like that's regretful mindset, kind of like you think, oh, it didn't turn out that way. So it's just kind of like, but what's the gift? Was it, you know, did it lead you closer to love?
Yeah.
Those kinds of things. And so it does take time.
Hindsight.
Yeah. And it's like, we need to talk to each other about these things. I was having a conversation a couple weeks ago with somebody about her ex, and, you know, just oh, he cheated on me and the younger woman and the whole thing. And just like, of course, heart-wrenching and feels abandoned and all those things. And this person is a Bitcoiner. And I was like, so would you be a Bitcoiner today if you were still in this relationship as it was? And she was like, fuck no. And I'm like, and she just woke up to that. Like, wow, I wouldn't get to be doing this thing, which she's passionate about. And so I felt like sometimes we need a friend to just get us out of the like, but isn't this awful? It's so shitty. And look at what he did or she did, or the fucking World Economic Forum, whatever the fuck it is. Sometimes we need a little buddy to be like, dude, look at everything, you know? And that's why we need our buddies. And so you guys are our buddies.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
What do we think? That's a wrap. I think that was a good. What did we go for? Almost 2 hours again. 2 hours Dude, you and I like can go. Like, it's easy to talk. Like, it's so fun talking about this stuff. I'm excited. We're going to host some space. We might do a space tonight or tomorrow.
Yep.
I don't know, but we want to invite some questions in for people so we can open up the conversation. We'll record it also. But yeah, we really think these conversations are very important, especially I think for younger Bitcoiners too, you know, people who maybe haven't had, like, we're, you know, a little bit further along the age bracket.
We're closer to death.
Speak for yourself. But I wish I would have had me in my pocket when I was 30.
Yeah. What would you have listened to you?
I would have possibly listened to me because I'm so cool, but I don't know. I mean, I think that's the thing, is just keep listening for who you're going to listen to that's going to ignite you to act on your highest and best voice, you know? And so it may or may not be Erin and I. It may be, you know, you like, what is that kid? I'm not even going to say his name, but the kid who got banned from these channels, you know, you might be interested in that guy's voices. Like, you know, just like find who you resonate with. And
And the reason why, you know, something that reframed that whole thing for me was the reason why when people say things and they resonate with you, it's because you already have that wisdom within you. It's just, you know, we have like amnesia about all the things that we know and that we've forgotten, right? So it's like, and that helps you not to put other people on a pedestal and idolize them and all that kind of stuff. Because it's like, oh, the reason why that makes sense to me is because I inherently know that, you know, maybe like, again, that's like God showing up in everyone, you know, so, but we need each other's voices to remember like, oh yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think I like to say sticky notes for the soul. And it's just like, whether it's like literally a sticky note, whether it's an angel card, whether it's a quote, whether it's a song lyric, whether it's your friend telling you something that you already know, like these are all these little reminders, I think, that we need to purposefully put in our way. Like, we need to be strategic about putting these things in our daily existence. And so having those phone calls with your friends, or, you know, reading that one page that you just flipped your book open to and you just needed to hear that one thing that it was going to say to you, like, or that jam that you're like, this is my jam to get me to this vibration that I want to be feeling. Like, you have to actively put those in your path. Because when, you know, you need them, if they're around you a lot, they'll be like, oh, right, I can go calm down and sit on my cushion. Oh, right. Yeah. I got Erin on speed dial. I'm having a panic attack about something or another. And you're already in the habit of having those things in your consciousness. Yeah. So that when you really need them, they're going to be easily available, and you're not scrambling for like, oh my God, who do I call? I'm, you know, or I'm empty here or whatever. It's like, that's why we're cultivating your environment is very important to me, you know, and your consumption. Like, what are you consuming? Right.
Yeah.
What are the podcasts, the songs, the videos, the books, the meetings, the events that you go to? Like, are you consciously consuming things that get you closer to love, or are you consciously consuming all of these things that separate you from love and keep you in the fear loop?
Yeah. And are you something that I need to be mindful of because I am such a consumer of information? It's like, am I taking enough time to not take in anything?
Yeah.
And to allow, you know, my own thoughts and God and whatever to come through.
Totally.
Yeah. Cause I get stuck in especially, you know, traveling alone, being alone. It's like, you know, I put on a podcast so I don't feel so alone.
I know. It's a really helpful tool.
But I just end up, you know, when you're just consuming, someone, you know, said this in a quote, it's like, when you're taking in all of other people's stuff, there's no room for your own stuff to come up, essentially. Yeah. So I need, and it's uncomfortable. I'm not going to lie. Like, I would way rather go for a walk and stick my earbuds in and just listen to something really cool and interesting. Yeah. But I have to force myself to not put them in and just be by myself with my thoughts.
I know. It's a weird one. It is. And it's like giving permission to yourself, because you're the only one who can do that, and to do both. But like giving yourself little like awareness challenges, right? Like, so for me, I noticed, like, I went through little phases where I'm like, okay, I'm only going to create content before I consume it every day.
Yes.
So whether like create before you consume, and literally if that creation simply is me going on Spotify and picking a song of the day and copying and pasting it and saying, I'm creating a post that says, go listen to Here Comes the Sun by the Beatles. Like, okay, that's me putting my energetic essence and imprint forward versus me responding to, holy shit, look at all the texts and the thread and the Twitter things. And so I'm more in a conscious place of how I'm going to approach the day versus how I'm going to react to the day, you know. And people do that with their email and with their digital stuff. I think and I notice very much a difference in my operating system if I do that versus don't do it.
Yeah.
And I feel like I'm a lot more at the will of that collective whatever's going on in that social channel or email or whatever than me being at the helm. It's a different thing, but it's easy because we're seeking dopamine hits.
Connection.
We're drug addicts. Like we are. And so that's why we're doing that first thing, like, ooh, what's happening? What train wreck are we going to see today on Twitter?
Yeah.
You know, and it's just like, fuck, I got to steer the little dog away from rolling in the poop. Like, you know what I mean? Because we're seeking that drug, that chaos, that experience. And it's,
for me, it's about connection. You know, I wake up alone and it's like,
yay, the world.
I want to not feel alone. So I grab my phone, and I really notice it because when I'm spending time with people one-on-one, I have no inclination to look at my phone. Like no inclination whatsoever. And people comment on it. They're like, oh, you know, I've noticed you're like hardly ever on your phone. It's like, well, it's because I'm with a person that I feel engaged with and connected to. So it's like, I don't have the desire to look at my phone. But inevitably, after a few days, that fades. You know, but I still try to be mindful of it. But still, interesting. Like we're always, again, it's like, we're always seeking. We're always in that state of like
longing. We talked about that, like with the filling. I call it filling your soul hole. You know, we're always trying to fill our soul hole. And I say the 5 Ds. It's diamonds, digital, drugs, donuts, and dicks.
I was going to say.
Don't forget the dicks. Sorry. I don't want a dick like that.
No. Donuts and dicks.
Donuts and dicks. Diamonds, drugs, digital, donuts, and dicks.
Yeah.
And it's true.
It's true.
We're the only D that's going to fill that is the divine.
Yeah.
It's the divine connection that you will never, ever lose.
Yeah.
It's always there. It's just you put all this stuff on top of it thinking this is going to make it feel better. And it doesn't. And so it's that conscious moment by moment nature of, all right, thanks, I'm connected. Look, I'm connected.
Yeah.
It's the magic of our breath, right? And
Yeah.
that we can utilize it as our sticky note for our soul.
Yeah.
So, yay,
Hello,
breath.
this is God calling.
I'm here with you.
Hi, God.
Hi, God.
Are you on Twitter this morning by any chance?
Did you see that post? Oh my God. Oh, yeah. It is.
It's a struggle, man. It's a fucking struggle.
It's the struggle of the spiritual being that lives within us and also the animal being.
Uh-huh.
You know, it really they exist, and to pretend like I'm just going to feed the spiritual one all the time. Like, no, this animal one is important, and we're human, we're flesh creatures. Yeah. And so we can operate differently. It does take a little bit more awareness and intentionality.
And you dance between the two spaces.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a dance, the yin and the yang, sister.
Yep.
All right. We love you guys.
Yay.
This is DJ Val and Erin Crawford. Go follow Erin Crawford if you guys are listening. ERINCRAWFORD 41 at Twitter. And I'm DJ Valerie B Love. And you guys can go check out show notes over at djvaleriebelove.com and support both of our shows. We're going to put these, I'll put them on both of the shows.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can record them, or I don't care, whatever. But go to fountain.fm and you can check us. You're on Fountain, right?
Yeah.
Death and Bitcoin.
So, I don't know how to use it, but I'm on there.
I know. Maybe that's what we'll do, is because we don't know how to use all the little pushy promote thingies or whatever they're called, clips. And
no idea. Bless other people that
thank you for doing it.
And...
I know there's people who are streaming some sats to the Bitcoin Piece of Music podcast.
Yeah.
And I thank you, and I don't know how to do it yet. So maybe that'll be one of our little things, our get-tos today.
Our learning project.
All right. We love you. All right. Swan and Pacific Bitcoin Conference. We don't know if you listened to this whole 2 hour and 5 episode. Chances are pretty low you did. But if you did, we love you. And Erin and I really would love the opportunity to be on one of your stages and talk about these important issues, because I think it would really help benefit Bitcoiners and helping to cultivate daily awareness through daily practice. And, how do we make the world and ourselves better with Bitcoin? Yay.
Yeah.
High five.
High five.
Yay. All right. Let's everybody inhale together. Exhale, peace. Inhale love and exhale peace. God bless you all. Thanks for tuning in. May you be safe, happy, healthy, and at ease in this moment. Thanks, Erin. This is so much fun. I love you.
Thanks,
and it's 2:22 our time, so that's a good time. Just the two of us. We can make it if we try. Just the two of us, you and I. All right. We love you guys.
Bye.
Aloha.